The rain wasn't a sound. It was a presence. A steady, percussive drumming against the old bones of the house that vibrated through the floorboards and into Chloe's feet. It was the only sound, save for the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the soft, sleeping breaths of her daughter, Olivia, from the next room. Chloe ran a hand over her face, the exhaustion of a 12-hour nursing shift settling deep in her muscles. The book on her lap, a dry text on advanced cardiac life support, was a blur. Then came the other sound. 3 knocks. Hard, fast, desperate. Not the polite rap of a neighbor or the lazy pound of a delivery driver. This was the sound of knuckles hitting wood with the last of someone's strength. Chloe froze. This neighborhood wasn't the kind where you open the door after dark, especially not in a storm that seemed to be washing the world away. Her heart, the one she'd been reading about, gave a hard, clinical thump against her ribs. She slid the book onto the cushion beside her and rose, moving silently on socked feet to the small peephole. Nothing. Just the distorted, watery dark of her porch, the yellow light catching beads of rain as they cascaded down. Another knock, weaker this time, followed by a heavy slumping sound. Against every instinct, against every rule she'd made for herself and Olivia since they'd moved in, she turned the deadbolt. It slid back with a loud, definitive click. She opened the door a crack, the safety chain still engaged. He was folded on her doormat, one hand braced against the doorframe to hold himself up. Water streamed from him, pooling on the worn wood of her porch. He was wearing a suit, or what was left of one. It was black, tailored, and utterly ruined, clinging to a frame that was broad in the shoulders and lean at the waist. But it wasn't the rain that had ruined it. A dark, viscous stain spread from his side, a stark void against the wet fabric. He lifted his head slowly, and the dim porch light caught in his eyes. They were dark, sharp, and shockingly alert despite the slump of his body. He was Korean, his black hair plastered to his forehead, his features stark and angular. But it was his hand that held her attention. Pressed against the doorframe, his knuckles were white. Long, elegant fingers, a heavy, plain silver ring on his pinky. It was a hand that looked like it had never known a day of manual labor, yet it was holding him up through what was clearly a grievous injury. "Please," he rasped. The word was a shard of glass. Not a plea, but a command issued from a place of absolute desperation. Chloe's training kicked in before her fear could. She saw the pallor under his skin, the shallow hitch in his breathing. She saw shock. Internal bleeding. The clock was ticking. She undid the chain. The decision was made in a single fluid motion. She hooked her arm under his, taking on his surprising weight. He was heavier than he looked, dense with muscle. He stumbled inside, his cold, wet body a shock against hers. The scent of him filled her small entryway, rain, expensive cologne that smelled of cedar and smoke, and the unmistakable metallic tang of blood. "The couch," she grunted, wrestling him through the narrow hall and into her small, tidy living room. The room was warm, filled with the scent of the lavender candle she'd been burning and the faint, sweet smell of Olivia's shampoo that clung to the throw blankets. He collapsed onto the floral print sofa she bought secondhand, leaving a dark smear on the cushions. He was breathing heavily now, his eyes closed, his face a mask of disciplined pain. "I'm a nurse," she said, her voice steady. It was the same voice she used to calm panicked patients in the ER. "I need to see the wound." He didn't answer, just gave a sharp, almost imperceptible nod. She didn't wait for permission. Her hands went to the buttons of his suit jacket. The fabric was fine wool, impossibly smooth even when soaked. Underneath was a white shirt, now mostly red, and a strip of silk that looked like a makeshift bandage tied tightly around his ribs. It was already saturated. "This needs to come off." She worked quickly, her fingers efficient as she unbuttoned his shirt. The skin beneath was pale and taut over a wall of muscle. A long, clean slice ran along his side, deep and ugly. A knife wound. It was deep, but it looked like it had missed his vital organs. "For now," he hissed as she gently probed the edges. "Who did this?" she asked, not because she expected an answer, but because talking kept her hands steady. His eyes opened again, pinning her. The intensity in them was unnerving. They were not the eyes of a simple mugging victim. They were cold, assessing, ancient. Does it matter? It matters if they're still out there, she countered, her gaze flicking to the window, to the rain-lashed street beyond. He followed her gaze, and for a second, a flicker of something other than pain crossed his face. It looked like calculation. They are. The words hung in the air, cold and heavy. That was when she understood. This was not a random act of violence. This man hadn't just been in a fight. He was being hunted. And she had just invited the hunt into her home. The home where her daughter was sleeping. A wave of nausea and adrenaline washed over her. Her hands trembled for the first time. She pulled them back, balling them into fists. You need to leave. He watched her, his expression unreadable. I can't. I have a child here, she said, her voice low and fierce. I can't have this in my house. Leaving puts her in more danger than staying, he said, his voice quiet but absolute. They saw me come this way. They are checking every house on this block. A man leaving your home now, bleeding? They will not knock politely. The blood drained from her face. He was right. Her quiet street, with its cracked sidewalks and flickering streetlights, was no longer anonymous. It was a hunting ground. Her home, her sanctuary, was now a hiding place. A target. He pushed himself up slightly, a grimace tightening his lips. I need your help. After I will be gone, you will be compensated. You and your daughter will be safe. It sounded like a business transaction. He spoke of safety and compensation as if they were commodities he could trade. Chloe looked from his cold, certain eyes to the dark stains spreading on her couch, and then toward the hallway that led to Olivia's room. She was trapped. He hadn't needed a weapon to hold her hostage. His mere presence had done it. She took a deep breath, the nurse taking over again. Survival first. Panic later. Fine, she said, her voice clipped. Don't move. I'll get my supplies. She retrieved the emergency medical kit she kept under the sink, the one she'd assembled herself. Antiseptics, sutures, sterile gauze. As she worked, cleaning the wound with practiced, impersonal movements, the silence in the room grew thick and charged. The only sounds were the snip of her scissors cutting away the ruined fabric of his shirt, the clink of her instruments on the ceramic coffee table, and his ragged, controlled breaths. He didn't flinch as she disinfected the gash. He didn't make a sound as the needle pierced his skin for the first stitch, or the second, or the third. He just watched her, his gaze unwavering. She could feel his eyes on her face, her hands, her hair. It was a look of such focused intensity that it felt like a physical touch. She refused to meet it, keeping her own eyes locked on her work. She was stitching up a stranger, a dangerous man, on her living room floor, while her daughter slept peacefully down the hall. The sheer surreality of it threatened to overwhelm her. She focused on the task, on the clean, even sutures that would hold his skin together. It was a problem she could solve, a body she could mend. The rest of it, the danger he'd brought with him, was a wound she had no idea how to close. When she was done, she taped a thick pad of gauze over the stitches. Her hands were smeared with his blood. It will hold, she said, her voice flat. But you need a doctor. Antibiotics. You are a nurse, he stated. It wasn't a question. I'm not a miracle worker. That wound is deep. It will get infected. He pushed himself into a sitting position, his movements stiff. He looked at the neat bandage, then back at her. For the first time, his expression softened almost imperceptibly. You have steady hands. He looked around her small, cozy living room, at the crayon drawing of a lopsided sun Olivia had taped to the wall, the worn but beloved armchair, the stack of library books on the floor. His gaze was invasive, as if he were cataloging every detail, assessing its value. Before she could respond, a pair of headlights swept across her front window, cutting through the darkness and the downpour. They slowed, then stopped. Chloe's breath caught in her throat. The man, she didn't even know his name, moved with a speed that was terrifying. He was off the couch in an instant, his injuries seemingly forgotten. He grabbed her arm, his grip like steel, and pulled her down away from the window, into the shadows of the room. He pressed a finger to his lips, his eyes locked on the front of the house. The silence was absolute now. Even the rain seemed to have quieted. They crouched on the floor behind the couch, so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell the cedar and blood on his skin. His presence was overwhelming, a vortex of violence and control in her lavender-scented living room. The car door outside opened and closed with a quiet, solid thud. Footsteps, slow and methodical, approached her porch. This was it, the moment her world fractured. The choice to open the door had been a mistake. The choice to help him had sealed it. Now, crouched in the dark beside a bleeding man whose name she did not know, she understood that whatever happened next, her old life, the quiet, predictable life she had built for herself and her daughter, was already over. The footsteps stopped right outside her door. The world held its breath. The man beside her didn't move, didn't breathe. He was a statue carved from shadows and menace. And then, from the waistband at the small of his back, he drew a gun. It was black and matte, and looked impossibly heavy in his hand. The quiet click as he released the safety was the loudest sound she had ever heard. The knock that followed was not desperate. It was patient, authoritative, the sound of men who knew you were inside and were prepared to wait. The man beside her turned his head, his dark eyes meeting hers. There was no fear in them, only a question. A silent, terrifying question that asked her whose side she was on. He had revealed a part of his world, and now he was waiting to see what she would do. He was waiting to see if she would break. He leaned in, his lips brushing her ear. His breath was warm. "Do not make a sound," he whispered. The command was soft, but it carried the weight of an empire. Chloe held her breath, her own survival instinct screaming. She could scream now, alert them, give him up. It would be the smart thing to do, the safe thing to do. But when she looked at the gun in his hand, and then at his eyes, she saw a man who would not be taken alive. A firefight would erupt in her living room, 10 feet from where her daughter slept. So she stayed silent. She made her choice. The knocking stopped. A moment later, the headlights outside cut through the darkness again as the car pulled away. They were gone. For now. He slowly lowered the gun, his shoulders relaxing by a fraction. He looked at her, truly looked at her, and the cold calculation in his eyes was replaced by something else. Something she couldn't name. "My name," he said, his voice a low rumble, "is Kwon Min-jun." He had given her his name, a piece of himself. It felt less like an introduction and more like a brand. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. Both their heads snapped toward the sound. Olivia stood there, rubbing her eyes, her favorite stuffed bunny clutched in one hand. She was small and swallowed by her oversized pajamas. "Mommy?" she asked, her voice thick with sleep. "Who's that?" Min-jun went perfectly still. Every ounce of menace vanished, replaced by an unnerving quiet. He looked at the child, and for the first time since he'd collapsed on her doorstep, he looked utterly lost. It was the first crack in the armor. His wound, the one Chloe had stitched, was on his side. But she was starting to realize the real one was somewhere much deeper. He had a vulnerability after all, and she was standing in the hallway, holding a stuffed rabbit. "It's okay, sweetie," Chloe said, her voice miraculously even. She rose slowly, putting herself between Min-jun and her daughter. "He's a friend. He hurt himself, and Mommy was helping him. Go back to bed." Olivia's eyes, wide and curious, fixed on Min-jun. "Does it hurt?" Min-jun's gaze was locked on the little girl. He seemed incapable of looking away. After a long moment, he gave a slow, single nod. Yes. The admission seemed to cost him something. Chloe felt it shift the air in the room. "Mommy gives the best kisses for boo-boos," Olivia offered seriously. She took a hesitant step forward. "Olivia, bed. Now," Chloe said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Olivia, sensing the steel in her mother's voice, turned and padded back to her room without another word. When the door clicked shut, Chloe turned back to Min-jun. The mask was back in place, but she had seen behind it. "You can't stay here." "I know," he said. He was looking at Olivia's closed door. "The man they are looking for would not be in a house with a child. That is why they left. They will be back," he finally met her eyes. "But I cannot leave you here alone. Not now." "Why not? You got what you wanted. A place to hide, a patch-up job." They saw the lights on. They will remember this house, he said simply. My problem is now your problem. I am sorry for that. I will fix it. Fix it. As if her life were a broken object he could simply repair. The arrogance was breathtaking, but underneath it, she heard something else. A thread of responsibility.
A debt.
He pulled out a sleek, black phone that looked like it had survived the storm without a scratch. He typed a quick, encrypted message with one thumb. My people are coming. They will take us somewhere safe. Us. Chloe's heart hammered.
No.
No, you're not taking me and my daughter anywhere. Do you think you have a choice? He asked, and the coldness was back, sharp and absolute. The men who did this to me are not reasonable. They're butchers. They know a woman lives here. They will come back, and they will not knock. They will break down the door to find out what you know. To find out if you helped me. He took a step closer, his height and presence dominating her small living room. Your life as you knew it ended when you opened that door. I can at least offer you a new one where you are alive. His words were brutal, but they were true. She knew it in her gut. The sight of those headlights, the patient knocking, the click of his gun. There was no going back. She had crossed a line. She thought about what she could have done differently. She could have left him on the porch. She could have called the police. But she hadn't. She had acted, and now she had to live with the consequences. Where, she whispered. Where would we go? Somewhere they will never find you, he promised. An hour later, a black sedan, silent as a ghost, pulled up to the curb. Two men in dark suits got out. They moved with the same economical grace as Minjun, their eyes scanning the street, the houses, the shadows. They entered without knocking, one taking up a position by the door, the other approaching Minjun with a respectful bow of his head. Boss, the man said. It is done. The traitor has been dealt with. Minjun's face was stone. And his family, safe. As you ordered, the man's eyes flickered to Chloe, dismissive and cold. The woman's? She comes with us. The child, too, Minjun said. It was not a request. Chloe went to Olivia's room. She scooped her sleeping daughter into her arms, grabbing the stuffed bunny and the small, worn quilt from her bed. Olivia mumbled in her sleep, burying her face in Chloe's neck. The familiar weight of her, the sweet scent of her hair, was a painful anchor to a life that was sinking fast. As she carried Olivia out, she saw Minjun speaking to his man in low, rapid Korean. The man handed him a fresh shirt and a black jacket. As Minjun shrugged off his ruined one, Chloe saw the intricate tapestry of ink that covered his back and shoulders. A dragon, its scales rendered in stunning detail, its eyes seeming to glitter in the dim light. It was beautiful and terrifying. He turned and saw her watching. He didn't try to hide it. He simply held her gaze as he buttoned the clean shirt, covering the art, hiding the beast. The journey was a blur of dark streets and rain-slicked highways. Olivia slept through it all, safe in Chloe's arms. Chloe stayed awake, watching the city lights smear into streaks of neon. She was in a car with armed men, being taken to an unknown location by the head of a criminal organization. And yet, oddly, the fear had subsided, replaced by a strange, hollow calm. She had made a series of choices, and this was the result. The safe house was a penthouse apartment in a sleek, anonymous glass tower downtown. It was the complete opposite of her cozy, lived-in home. This place was cold, minimalist, and sterile. White walls, black leather furniture, and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the sprawling, glittering city. It was a fortress in the sky. Minjun's man showed her to a bedroom. The girl can sleep here. Anything you need will be provided. Chloe laid Olivia down on the king-sized bed, tucking the quilt around her. She watched her daughter sleep for a long time, the rise and fall of her small chest the only real thing in this cold, unreal place. When she came back out, Minjun was standing by the vast window, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He hadn't touched it. He was just looking out at the city below, at the empire of lights that was his territory. She is safe here, he said without turning around. For how long? Chloe asked, her arms crossed over her chest. For as long as it takes, he finally turned to face her. The dim light from the city below carved his face into sharp planes and shadows. The man who betrayed me was my cousin. I raised him like a younger brother. He sold information to a rival clan where I would be tonight, that I would be alone. He was telling her something he didn't have to. It was a confession, a justification. She didn't know which. He did it for money, Minjun continued, his voice low. But they promised him something else. My position. They lied. They used him, and then they killed him. I was too late to stop it. His gaze drifted, becoming distant. I was supposed to protect him. Our family. There it was. The wound beneath the wound. Not just betrayal, but failure. A debt of blood he felt he owed. Chloe thought of Olivia, of the fierce, primal need to protect her. For the first time, she felt a flicker of something other than fear toward this man. It was a sliver of understanding. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because you deserve to know the nature of the trouble you are in," he said. He set the glass down. "And because no one has shown me kindness without an agenda in a very long time. I am trying to understand yours." Before she could answer, his phone buzzed. He looked at it, and his entire demeanor shifted. The mask of control slammed back into place, harder than before. "They found your house." Chloe's blood ran cold. "What?" "They went back. They broke in. They are looking for you." He looked at her, his eyes dark with a lethal certainty. "They know you helped me. They know you are with me. You are a loose end. A liability." He paused, and the weight of his next words settled on her like a shroud. "To them, you are now a target." The room felt like it was tilting. He wasn't just a man who had brought danger to her door. He had made her the danger's destination. "You have to let me go," she said, her voice shaking. "Me and Olivia. We can disappear. I won't say anything to anyone." He moved toward her, closing the space between them until he was standing directly in front of her. He was so close she had to tilt her head back to look at him. "Do you believe you can run faster than they can hunt? They will find you, and they will use you and your daughter to hurt me." He reached out, his fingers gently touching her chin, tilting her face up. His touch was surprisingly soft, a stark contrast to the violence he embodied. "You are safest with me. I am the only one who can protect you." His thumb stroked her jaw, a small, almost involuntary gesture. "I brought this storm to you," he murmured, his voice a low growl. "I will see you through to the other side of it." That was the confession. Not of love, but of ownership. Of a debt he intended to pay, whether she wanted him to or not. It was the most dangerous and honest thing anyone had ever said to her. In that moment, watching the city lights reflect in his dark, predatory eyes, she made another choice. She didn't pull away. She stayed.